everyone. Welcome to another episode of Live with NORML. I'm J.M. Padini, Development Director here at the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. It's Friday, August 22nd, 2025. You know what that means, friends? We're going to talk about this week's cannabis policy and science news, and I'm going to answer your burning questions live. So let's get down to it. First, take a quick second and hit that like, follow, or subscribe button wherever you're watching so you never miss when NORML goes live. And I know you have questions, so drop them in the comments and let me know where you're watching from. Big shout out to my bud vase. I see you, friend. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your support too. Let's see who's over here. Hey Thomas, thanks for watching. Hey Nick, good to see you. Good to see you, Nick. You weren't first today, friend. But we're back. We're back streaming on Facebook again, so that's big news for us. We weren't able to do it last time. Hey Deb in Fredericksburg, thanks for watching. Good to see you. Right, so it's been a week when it comes to cannabis policy in the United States. Last week we didn't have a show, but there were some big news. Oh, hey Paula, you're in Iowa, trying to get back to Dallas. I mean, I guess that's Texas better than Iowa slightly. Maybe on cannabis policy, sort of. They're both pretty bad. My bud vase has joined us on Instagram, and they're asking why is so much going backward. And I have something that'll tell you exactly why. Elections have consequences. And Americans keep electing people who are terrible on cannabis policy, and then they seem upset and confused as to why they have terrible cannabis policies. Don't vote for people who are terrible on policies that you want. Let's talk about some of those people. Thank you for bringing that up. I don't know what that is. Okay, sure. Hey, Byram. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Richard. Good to see you. Hey, Ellie. Thank you for coming, friend. Hey, Curtis. Welcome back. Curtis, your question is so good. Oh, gosh. Okay, let's show Curtis's comment because that's the best. Curtis says, hey, from Georgia, just wanted to ask, when can the government actually get some cannabis legislation passed without the fear-mongering? Great question. And I'm glad you brought this up, Curtis, because I was at so the General Assembly in Virginia is in session right now, but we do have meetings in the time in between sessions called the interim. And there is a commission that meets during the interim that is tasked with looking at cannabis policy. And I was there and I was talking to one of the members of the commission, a delegate here in Virginia. And I was commiserating with her that I am in my era of we are not equal, not myself and her, but us being normal, or really anyone who's showing up to the table as a subject matter expert to talk about facts and evidence. This is not the same as an opinion, and everyone's welcome to their opinion, but someone's opinion and then cold hard data, those aren't both sides. We don't need to act like we need to listen to both sides when one is someone's opinion and one is someone showing up with cold hard facts. So that's where I'm at now. Unfortunately, the government's not there. We still capitulate to hand wringing and whining and give people's personal opinions far too much runway. Not here for that. Bennett Production, thanks for telling us about that. Bennett Production says, our South Dakota Cannabis Committee meeting was on 8/19 was a circus. Gosh, I want to hear more about that from you. I sure do. Oh, Ellie, it was Michael's birthday last week. Also, happy birthday, Michael. Thomas, your question is kind of interesting here. So Thomas is watching on Twitter and says this: pharma bribed politicians are standard in Germany. Do laws against human rights get proved without interests? I don't know, sometimes, but it's really hard to move public policy wherever you are without financial support. And most certainly without constituent engagement, which brings me back to a big story from last week that I suspect all of you have already caught up on, but we're going to revisit it real quick. Let me see which one I want to do. This one right here. This will do. Okay. So not Monday of this week, but Monday of last week, Trump had a press conference. And during this press conference, somebody asked, which is why he spoke about it. He didn't bring it up on his own. Somebody asked. And the journalist who asked had to have been from a conservative outlet, because it was a very weighted question, and you could just kind of hear the reefer madness oozing out of the person's voice who was asking the question. So the question was about the rescheduling process, essentially. And Trump said that he was going to have something to say about the rescheduling process in the next few weeks. Okay, so maybe we've heard that once or twice before about 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. So this is a few weeks, and who knows what that means. It's been a minute. Let me grab this article that we have about it is a little bit better. So it's also worth noting that during this press conference, he said that his administration is looking at federally reclassifying cannabis, and that it would, quote, make a determination over the next few weeks, end quote. He also said that the subject is, quote, complicated, and he did acknowledge hearing, quote, great things about medical cannabis. But he also said that he's heard, quote, bad things having to do with just about everything else about marijuana. These are his first public comments about cannabis policy. It's August. This is the first time he has talked about cannabis policy at all since taking office in 2025. Great. So glad he said something. Don't think he really said much. But it did. Actually, let me go ahead and drop this. I'll drop this for you in the chat so you can read it. If you're watching on Instagram, I can't share the link with you there, but you can find this story in the news section of the NORML website. So you go to norml.org and then click on the tab that says news, and you'll see it a few down, maybe like the 5th story down. You'll see it. It's called Trump Says Cannabis Rescheduling Decision is Forthcoming. So we'll see. The social media engagement on these stories has been fascinating. Snaps to all of you who are on there talking about it. I love it. It's been great. And there we are. Thanks, Google, because you know how Google likes to kick me out in the middle of literally every live stream. Doesn't matter if I've just signed in, they're kicking me out. This brings us back to the sort of rescheduling conversation in the media. And he made these statements, and then the media started, remember the rescheduling is thing, and they had to write about it. They don't do a good job. I feel like my colleague is far more measured and kind in his characterization of this, but the media is terrible at reporting on the potential policy implications of cannabis rescheduling. So very astutely, NORML's Paul Armentano put together a great primer on cannabis rescheduling, myths versus reality. I'm going to share that with you right now, unless you're on Instagram. Sorry, then you can find it on the front page of the NORML website, pinned right there at the top. You can also find a link to it through our Instagram story as well. There is some good content on our Instagram that shows you a quick overview of what it will do and what it won't do. And we're going to have a lot of content about this coming up on our socials next week as well. So, hey, if you've got some quick questions you want to drop in there about rescheduling, feel free. But where is it? Here we go. Yeah, yes, of course, that's me trying to log into my own account. Thanks for asking, Google. I'm going to open up our social on it and awkwardly hold up my phone, because who doesn't want to do that? Okay. You can find this one on our, that's terrible reflection. You can find this one on NORML's Instagram. And this is just a real top line overview of some of the biggest misconceptions that we hear about the policy impacts of federal cannabis rescheduling. This is moving cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, which is the only considerations that are in the current administrative process related to cannabis rescheduling. Will this legalize cannabis nationwide? No, absolutely not. Will it force other states, will it force prohibition states to legalize? Absolutely not. Will it make cannabis available by prescription? Will it make cannabis only available by prescription? No, absolutely not. It will not make cannabis available by prescription, and it will not limit cannabis to only being available by prescription. Also, as you've heard us say many, many times on this show before, all of these state models right now that are regulating cannabis under Schedule 1 and are in conflict with federal law will be exactly the same if marijuana is Schedule 3. They will be just as in conflict with federal law. Nothing changes from that standpoint. The only thing, and before we get into the things that it does do, it also does not make research easier. Sure, in like a really limited capacity, if someone potentially doesn't have to get a Schedule 1 license for their lab, okay, but the way people talk about it in the media, where this is going to open up cannabis research, tells you how uneducated they are on this topic. Cannabis is one of the most researched substances on earth. There are over 50,000 entries. That's right, 50,000 entries on PubMed right now, the nation's repository for peer-reviewed studies and papers. There is no lack of research on cannabis. Is it complicated to do research? Of course. Doesn't stop it from being conducted. It doesn't stop clinical trials from being conducted either. So no, rescheduling is not going to blow the lid off of this supposed research that we need. We already have it. Now, the three things that it does potentially improve: the ability for legal licensed operators, your dispensaries, your cultivators that are legal under a state program, would open up the ability for them to take standard business tax deductions. They can't do that right now. It's one of the reasons why cannabis costs so much. Legal cannabis costs so much, because these businesses cannot operate the way a traditional business can. So yes, it would improve the outlook for taxes. It also has the ability to significantly impact two federal restrictions. One, the restriction on gun ownership, right? The federal government says, no, it's Schedule 1, so you can't own a gun, even though multiple courts disagree with that. And also public housing. So it would improve Second Amendment rights and the ability to access public housing. But it doesn't do all these other weird things. Crazy Legs, I see your comment. Yes, it would improve 280E, presumably, though with this administration, who knows? But it does not have anything to do with prescriptions. It doesn't make cannabis available by prescription. It's not going to make health insurance cover your medical cannabis. So if you're going to talk about, this is for everyone, if you want to talk about rescheduling and the policy implications, please read this so that you know what you're talking about. Hope it helps. Hey, Joshua, thanks for joining us. You can't wait for Kansas to jump on board. Truth. Ellie, thank you. You're so kind. Hi, Georgia. Ken, I like your suggestion that everyone should send cannabis stats to their elected officials. You can do that through the NORML website. We have a lot available for you. NORML fact sheets are great. You can download the PDF one pager and send it over to really anyone. Again, the Shadow has a comment here. The Shadow says, I'm a medical cannabis patient. It would be nice if they do pass it to Schedule 3. Insurance companies could help us, but I know it would never happen, but I would like to have it decriminalized. Okay, Schedule 3 doesn't decriminalize, though I agree, wherever you are. Hopefully, it would be nice for it to be decriminalized if it isn't where you are. And it won't make insurance cover anything. Hi, Quinn. Thanks for joining us. Hey, R. Clement on Instagram. I see your question. Will rescheduling cannabis eliminate drug testing for THC? No. Not unless there's some sort of trigger law in place in your state where if something happens at the federal level, then it changes state code. And if your state had a law specific to that, then perhaps, but no, it doesn't just de facto eliminate drug testing. Hey, Troy, thanks for your question on Instagram. Troy asks, why is there such a stigma associated with cannabis? Oh, because it's the linchpin of the criminal justice system. Troy goes on to say, Governor Lee is not going to budge unless Trump embraces rescheduling. What is the downside to rescheduling? The real downside, if you want to look at it like that, is that people, elected officials, members of Congress could say, oh, well, we just did something, so we don't have to do anything else. There are elected officials who could look at rescheduling and say, that was enough. I don't need to think about descheduling. So rescheduling has really, really minimal impacts on state and federal cannabis policies. And in order for cannabis in the United States to be treated the same way we treat alcohol and tobacco, those substances are not scheduled. Marijuana would also have to be not scheduled. We typically call that descheduling. And the way to remove marijuana from the Federal Controlled Substances Act, that's descheduling, is for Congress to pass a bill that does it. Now, people have often asked, oh, well, can't the president just do that by executive order? The real answer is no. Of course, under this current administration, no one really seems to care how the federal government is supposed to work, so who knows? But the real answer is no. It has to be by an act of Congress. Georgia, yes. Georgia asks if we got our Meta account back. Yes, we were so very fortunate. Meta, they did warn us that it could take some time. And I think it took about 12 days. But they were able to fully restore all of our assets. We lost about 15,000 followers on NORML's page and 19,000 followers on Virginia NORML's Facebook page. So if anyone wants to help make us feel better, please go follow those two pages on Facebook and encourage everyone you know to do the same. You're right, Ken. Ken says Utah is not normal, but they've been hearing from me. Can we find someone in Salt Lake that can pressure the Capitol? Can we? She's still in Utah, but we did have a really fantastic cannabis-focused advocate in Utah for some time. But I know that Christine is doing other things now. There is someone who's really paying attention to it there, though. So if anyone wants to get involved in Utah, please reach out. Quinn, your comment's so funny. Joanna, hey, thanks for your comment. Joanna says, have you seen the new laws that the Massachusetts regulator is rolling out for consumption, social consumption? I have not personally seen them. Nick. Michelle, I agree with your subsequent comment. Thank you, Shadow, for liking and subscribing. You're welcome, Ken. Let's go over here and make sure I'm getting all of I caught up on all your Instagram comments. Deb, I'm sorry, Deb. Nana Deb, I saw your comment earlier. I agree about who was the worst. Thank you. Yes, the governor in Virginia is terrible. Nana Deb says, in Virginia, we have to contend with the worst governor ever. Yeah, correct. Maybe not ever, but he's pretty terrible right now. At least on everything. I was going to say at least on cannabis policy, but so many other things. And he's on his way out, so I don't have to pretend to be nice anymore. Bye. Yeah, Kayla makes a great comment on Instagram. Kayla says federal employees can't use cannabis even if they live in a legal state, and it's ridiculous. Until these sorts of issues are fixed, just state legalization isn't enough for me. And you're right, it is going to take a lot more movement at the federal level to resolve not only the conflicts between state and federal law, but the overly punitive laws related to marijuana that federal employees are subject to, that veterans are subject to, that healthcare providers are often subject to. It really is, there's so far to go. And if Americans don't elect a Congress that will advance a bill to deschedule marijuana, and if they don't have a president who will sign a bill to deschedule marijuana, we're just going to continue dragging the weight of prohibition further and further down the road. Oh, Quinn, yes, I do know Don. Yes, I am familiar with him. Curtis says, what if we take all the stats from legal states and try to convince the prohibition states to change? I mean, that's kind of what we do here at NORML. I'll say this, and I know you've heard me say it before, Curtis. One more time for everyone in the back row. We, meaning collectively throughout the United States, do not legislate based on facts, data, science, or reason. We legislate based on feelings. First and foremost, it's feelings. And when people have feelings about marijuana prohibition, and oh boy, do they ever, especially those who want to keep it, they want to keep it because it works for them. They're used to it, it's comfortable for them. Either their donor base, they think their donor base supports it, or their donor base profits off of criminalization. And you know which party we're talking about. So they're not incentivized to change something that's working for them, something that's keeping them in office, that's keeping their donor base flush. They don't have any desire to change that. It isn't until they experience something that has a greater personal impact, that has more meaning to them. So often in states, prohibition states, more conservative states, we've seen progress around medical cannabis as it relates to children, because adults are not sympathetic. People, legislators will sit there, and you can, bring in the adult patient who is dying from cancer and just doesn't want to go to jail. That's not impressive. But a child, that's somebody that they can have feelings about, that because that kid looks like their kid or their grandkid or their niece or their something like that. And so then they're a little more willing to do something. That's what happened here. That's what happened here in Virginia. That's what happened in Utah, in Texas, in Georgia, plenty of other states. If you see a state that has a CBD law, that was the driving message behind it. I don't think so. So Joanna says Big Pharma has a huge hand in cannabis prohibition. I don't think they really do. This isn't to say that people who are owners of pharma companies haven't dumped money into opposition campaigns. We saw in, I think it was Nevada, we saw the manufacturers of synthetic THC FDA approved drug. We saw them dump about $500,000 to oppose that measure. They were unsuccessful. Really, what you want to be looking at are the people that you elect. That's the problem. Not you personally. I don't know who you voted for, but America, stop electing people who are terrible on cannabis policy. That's the real issue. Because when you look at who was funding the campaigns of staunch prohibitionists, you're going to get a high volume of law enforcement organizations, of organizations related to incarcerating individuals. And remember, we pretend like we don't have slavery in the United States, but boy, we sure do. And marijuana gets you right into that system. Not necessarily because you were arrested for marijuana, but very often because you are on probation and you tested positive for marijuana, and now you're being remanded on your original crime so that you can work for some corporation for pennies on the dollar while you're in prison. No one wants to dismantle, obviously we do, but there are a lot of corporations that don't want to dismantle that structure. Those are the things that we aren't talking about enough, and that's really what's keeping cannabis criminalized. It's very easy to say, oh, it's big pharma, oh, it's alcohol, oh, it's tobacco. Those are lazy answers. It's not that. It's not to say that those entities don't have some interest or opposition, but that is not the driving force behind prohibition. Llewellyn, yes, we did talk about Schedule 3. We talked about rescheduling earlier. Really, here's the catch up on that. Trump said words about it and said a few weeks. That's it. You're all caught up. There's a story pinned to the top of the NORML page website, which I know you've seen it, but it's there, and it has the sort of all the topics that I went through. We do, yeah. Quinn brings up a great point. Quinn says, look at Canada and their successful nationwide legalization. Yeah, we wrote about this last week. I didn't do a show last week, but we did write about this survey last week that Quinn is mentioning here, where there was a study done, and nearly 8 in 10 survey respondents said that they obtain cannabis from the legal market. Let me see if I can Let me see. Of course I can find it. It's right here. I'm going to get that story and put it in there. Yeah, Joanna, the private prison system. You got it. Exactly. Let me grab Canada. Here's the story for you, Quinn. He wrote an article from NORML's info. Okay, for everyone else then, here's the story coming. Nearly 8 in 10 consumers say they obtain cannabis exclusively from legal markets. These are Canadian consumers where legalization is nationwide. All right, let's get into some more news here. So we talked about last week's, in a few weeks, comments. And we talked about cannabis rescheduling myths versus reality. The other really big story from this week is this. Let me drop it in the comments for those of you who can see it. And then, sorry, Instagram, if you want to find this story again, you can find it in the news section, on the front page. You can find this story on the front page of the NORML website. It's going to be in the email that goes out tomorrow morning. So if you're not subscribed, make sure you go to norml.org/subscribe and drop your email in there so you get these stories delivered straight to your inbox. This is also going to be on NORML's Instagram, I think tomorrow evening is when it'll post. But judges on the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, this is a federal appeals court. Anyhow, judges on the 11th Circuit ruled that patients who have medical cannabis in compliance with state laws are free to exercise their Second Amendment rights to own a firearm. Now, this is not the first federal appeals court to rule this way. Similarly, district court judges in Oklahoma and Texas have also issued very similar opinions. Now, this particular case that was heard in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, this case was brought by Nikki Fried. Nikki Fried used to be the commissioner of agriculture in Florida. She serves on NORML's board of directors. So NORML was directly involved in this case, including NORML legal committee members David Holland, again, Nikki Fried, Greg Morse, and Joe Bondi. Joe Bondi is the chair of NORML's board of directors as well. I think he's also chair of the amicus committee here for the NORML legal committee. But this is, Nikki goes on to say that this is a huge win for freedom. No medical cannabis patient should have to choose between their rights to their medicine or their right to bear arms. Joe Bondi says this is a substantial win for patients and constitutional rights. This ruling makes plain what NORML has long argued. Medical cannabis patients should not be treated as second-class citizens under the law. And NORML's Paul Armentano chimes in with this. Neither past nor current cannabis use should automatically preclude someone from legal protections explicitly provided by the U.S. Constitution. Either the Supreme Court or Congress needs to ultimately resolve this issue so that responsible cannabis consumers are no longer threatened with federal prison terms simply for exercising their Second Amendment rights. This case is Cooper et al. Versus the Attorney General of the U.S. You can read all about this on the front page of NORML. Good day to you, Tio. Thanks for joining us. Quinn. Oh, wow. Joseph says Missouri legalized cannabis in 2022, and now it's the 7th largest marijuana market in the nation. It's interesting. I know, right, Llewellyn? I think cottage industry is a very kind way to say that. Oh, that comment's funny. Oh, fun fact, they do not. So you just got blocked by whoever you were. Cool. Okay, next. Always gotta, always gotta bring out the crazies. You know, let's go ahead and delete that highly offensive comment as well. Okay, we talked about 2A, we talked about rescheduling. Here's one. Here's one that is in high times, but it is by NORML's Paul Armentano. And I think you all are really going to like this one. This one is already on our Instagram. If you're watching there, you can find it there. But this article that is in High Times is called Want Clean, Safe Cannabis? Home grow and legal access are the answer. This is, I did block that person, Joanna, immediately. This article is great. Thank you, High Times, for publishing this for us. But in this, Paul talks about, I'm going to read the first paragraph to you. It comes as no surprise that police in Warwick, Rhode Island, recently walked back claims that exposure to, quote, fentanyl-laced cannabis, end quote, was responsible for a local woman's tragic overdose death. While street fentanyl can no doubt be deadly, this substance is rarely, if ever, present in cannabis. So what this is getting at is that police love the lazy claim of fentanyl-laced cannabis. There's not been a confirmed case of that yet. So let's say it couldn't happen. Sure, someone could get fentanyl on cannabis, but it's not a thing. There was one incident, I think it was Connecticut, where ultimately they determined that it was cross-contamination that happened during evidence collection. Anyhow, this is such a good article. I really love it. I hope you all will read it. And the point of it is that if we're serious, if someone's serious about ensuring that people aren't harmed by so-called fentanyl-laced cannabis or by contaminated cannabis in general, then the answers are right here. We have decades of real-world regulatory experience with this in the United States, and it's called legalization and regulation, and including the ability for people to cultivate at home. Check it out on High Times. Samuel, thank you. I had an enjoyable birthday. Appreciate it. Hey, David. Michelle, exactly. Michelle says no one is lacing their weed with fentanyl. Doesn't exactly help customer retention. Also, while there are differing opinions on this, it's generally accepted that it would destroy the fentanyl when you lit it on fire. So, again, people are lazy, and clickbait and rage narratives are more easy, they're more fun, they're more convenient than learning anything. Okay, hey Jay. Jay says, my friend's son actually died from smoking a fentanyl-laced joint. How to, I'm not going to argue that with you, but did they get it tested? Often what we see is the claim that, oh, I just had marijuana, because there are lesser or no penalties for marijuana possession versus penalties for fentanyl. That's terrible that your friend's son passed away. What I would say is, was there a lab analysis done by an actual lab? If not, that's something everyone should be looking at, having done. David, sorry, going back to you. Oh, thank you. Richard said the same thing. Richard said, you do not put fentanyl on cannabis. The flame from the lighter will burn up the fentanyl. Exactly. Okay. Sorry, David. Third time's a charm. David asks, I'm late. Did you already cover Virginia's meeting on Wednesday? If not, any thoughts? Anything new behind the scenes on the bill? No, there's nothing new. And thank you for sending me the email on that language. That's, we're going to look at that. But no, wasn't anything new. Other than if you don't prepare for a meeting, people will be mad at you. I'm not talking about myself. I'm just saying in general, if you are going to present in a meeting and you don't prepare, people are not going to be happy about it. Just put it out there in the ether for whoever needs to hear it. Thank you, Joanna. Exactly. Joanna said, this is just like no one is handing out edibles to your kids on Halloween. It's exactly like that. Yeah, it's easy. Okay, so Jay goes on to say, I don't know the whole story, but this was the claim of the result of his death. Yeah, it's easy to claim that, but if you don't have a lab analysis of the product consumed, then it's just someone saying that, unfortunately. Hey, Arctic, I don't want to get our, I guess I just said fentanyl and cannabis and marijuana a whole bunch, so that's probably fine. But I could probably say this too. Oh, okay. Arctic says, remember Angel, D-U-S-T? I sure do theoretically remember it. Not personally, but yes. Yes. But just because that was a thing doesn't mean that they're not the same substances. Exactly, Danker. And it's not even just, Danker says it's a dealer selling both drugs in a dirty, messy house, cross-contamination, most likely. And not just that, could a do drug dealers sell drugs? Yes. And do they sell all of them? Sure. And do they touch them and then get cross-contamination? It's absolutely reasonable. The singular case that there's any lab analysis on, right, was actually cross-contamination, and it was cross-contamination that occurred during evidence collection. Oh, Curtis, Curtis says, my therapist told me about marijuana addiction, and I didn't know what to really say. Well, you can say that there's certainly ability for there to be a behavioral addiction, but it doesn't have a physical mechanism. It doesn't have a mechanism for physical addiction. Now, let's say this. Yes, there absolutely can be a behavioral addiction to cannabis consumption. Sure. That's not a secret. But it's not like opioids where when you ingest opioids, your body makes more opioid receptors, which is why you need more opioids to get the same amount of relief that you got from a lower dose previously. It's not the same. Body's not making extra endocannabinoid receptors. But you can say to them, yeah, there's absolutely, I agree, there's the ability for there to be a behavioral addiction, but there is not the ability for there to be a physical addiction. It can feel like a physical addiction if you're using cannabis and it makes you feel better, and then you stop using it and you feel terrible. That's why a lot of people use cannabis, is for healthcare needs, and it makes them feel better. If it's helping someone control their MS symptoms and they're able to get out in the world and do all the things that they love, and then they stop having access to cannabis and they feel terrible, that's not the same as, we don't need to qualify that person as, oh, they had an addiction. They had a healthcare need that was being met by cannabinoids, and then they weren't taking them anymore. Does that make sense? Anyhow, also, every show, right? Oh, it's not even over there. Gosh, I gotta scoot over here and grab one. This is what you can give your therapist. You can hip them to this vibe. Clinical applications for cannabis and cannabinoids, a review of the recent scientific literature. All of this is available. This book is available in the NORML web store, store.norml.org, in this paperback version. It's available in the Kindle ebook store and on Amazon. And every section of this book is available on our website in the Marijuana Research Library, including PDFs of each section. So if you are seeing a healthcare provider for, I'm just going to open up and pick something. If you're seeing a healthcare provider for Alzheimer's, you can send them the whole section on Alzheimer's as a PDF. Check it out. Thank you, Michelle. That's what I was trying to say. Michelle says, no one is having physical withdrawals from stopping weed. Withdrawals being related to the dependency or the addiction, the so-called addiction. And what I want to differentiate is that is not the same as when someone uses cannabis for a healthcare need and then they stop using it and feel bad. That's not withdrawal. That's like if you need insulin and you stop taking it, right? Antihistamines, whatever. Chief Sutherland. Oh, that's a great name. All right, Chief Sutherland on Instagram. I see your question. Let's read it together. Chief Sutherland asked this. So is the new descheduling aimed to put all of the power in the hands of the existing rich and place control in the hands of pharmacy? If pharmacies are under control, doesn't that mean big pharma? Okay, so you were talking, what you're asking about is the rescheduling process. This is an administrative process that was initiated under the Biden administration and has been on pause under the Trump administration since taking office. And they've done nothing with it other than say a few words. He said a few words about it last week. We have a great resource for this. There's a link posted to it on NORML's Instagram. And no. So rescheduling marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 doesn't hand it to Big Pharma. It doesn't do anything. Everything's going to be the same, right? If rescheduling happened, here's what happens. All of these state programs, whether medical or adult use, that are happening right now under Schedule 1, they're all in conflict with federal law under Schedule 1. Marijuana moves to Schedule 3. They all still exist, and they're all still just as in conflict with federal law. Nothing changes. Cannabis is a plant, and this rescheduling petition is about botanical cannabis. The FDA does not regulate plants, nor are they going to. And botanical cannabis does not meet the criteria that FDA have established for FDA approval for prescription drugs. So botanical cannabis is never going to meet those criteria. Botanical cannabis under FDA's existing criteria cannot be available by prescription. There are cannabis-based medicines available by prescription. You can get a number of versions of THC. So Marinol is the brand name that most people know this as. Marinol is 100% pure synthetic THC in a sesame oil capsule. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not well tolerated by patients because it's just pure THC. It's a Schedule 3 drug. It's also available in a liquid form. You know who makes liquid? Why we make liquid drugs? They're for children. So it's available as a liquid. Syndros is the liquid name, brand name. And then there is Epidiolex, which is plant-derived CBD. And then other countries have the sort of Epidiolex precursor with Sativex, and it has both THC and CBD. And that's used in a number of countries, not the US. But no, so, we should all be so fortunate as to one day have the luxury of choosing between pharmaceuticalized cannabinoids at the pharmacy, Marlboro Greens at the big box store, or boutique, craft cannabis at the boutique dispensary, right? In some states, you have pretty close to that. Some you don't. No, rescheduling would not require government oversight on it. Schedule 1, Schedule 3, both illegal. Every state that has a regulatory model for cannabis that is illegal under Schedule 1 is still illegal under Schedule 3. It doesn't change any of that. We have to put to bed these false narratives about what rescheduling does. It's exhausting. But I know you all care about it, which is why we wrote this primer. So please go read it. Get the facts. We're going to have a whole visual series on NORML's Instagram next week. What about CBD farmers? I don't even know what CBD farmers are supposed to be. No, I don't think so. Richard says, will rescheduling help federal pot prisoners? No. No, and even let's say tomorrow Congress wakes up and decides to legalize, to end federal prohibition. Just like when a state legalizes, that doesn't get people out of jail or prison. You have to be intentional in undoing other policies that are bad. Legalization does not, I said this to someone on our Facebook today. Legalization in and of itself is not necessarily enough. Sure, your state or country might pass a legalization package that includes a number of other reforms, and that's great. Oftentimes, we see that more commonly now than we did in the early days. But just legalization on its face doesn't undo all of these, the harms of prohibition. The roots of prohibition run very, very deep and wide. They touch so many policy areas that you would never consider having anything to do with marijuana. And often, even post-legalization, you can still lose your job, your housing, your children, your access to some healthcare, your access to education. Even when cannabis is legal for you to use for medical and adult use in your state, you can still be subject to all of those. And at the federal level, your ability to own firearms or to have public housing, as well as employment implications. This is a lot we have to dig out of, friends. Exactly. Michelle says they haven't freed them in legal states. In some, they've done the work that they needed to do resentencing or release, but not all states. Sometimes you legalize and then you start working on release, review, and resentencing, but your state elects a terrible governor, and then your governor just says no. That was for you, Sheba. Nathan. Nathan says, will prices drop or go up? Presumably down, because all of these cannabis on the West Coast experiences lower prices than cannabis on the East Coast, because East Coast markets are younger than West Coast markets. This is all to say that unlike other businesses, these legal cannabis businesses under state law cannot take standard business tax deductions. And so then that makes their product cost more to make. And that makes it cost more for consumers to buy. So when they can take tax deductions, then yes, the hope is that they are able to sell their product for a lower price instead of passing that cost onto you, the consumers. America loves to treat cannabis consumers like cash cows. Boy, do they love that. No, Arctic, I work for NORML. Do I work with LPP? We have some interaction with LPP. David, I want to read your comment. Oh, okay, thank you. I had to skim it first to see if I want to show it. David says, David's talking about the hearing that happened, or the commission meeting that happened in Virginia this week. David says lots of passion from some presenters, but where I'm at now, I'm like, I want to basically show up with well-written legislation lines ready for a delegate to send to the drafting lawyers. Oh, my dude, you send those to me. Send them. If you have something you want, send it to me. If you want it to go in the bill. I mean, DLS will get the bill, but they're going to get it after it's done to clean it up. Yeah. Okay. Michelle says we need to stop copying failed systems and start learning from their mistakes. I would agree. I would agree with that. Absolutely. There are ample. We have decades of real world regulatory experience with cannabis in the United States, and we can just look at other models and see what worked and what didn't. And there's a lot to learn because they started with nothing. They started with, let's invent a wheel. And they did, and they were like, whoa, we're gonna make this better. You look at what legalization looked like in the early states and what it looks like now is very different. There's a lot to learn, and some states still haven't learned their lessons. I hear this a lot here in Virginia. Oh, where entities that are presumably well-meaning but also don't go here. Well, you got to take it slow. So we legalized Virginia in 2021. I think we're good on slow. It's 2025 last I checked. 4 years is real slow. What I want to hear instead is, do not take it so slow. Like, it's a lazy answer to be like, oh, you gotta take it slow. Like, people are just running face first into policy decisions. People who write public policy for a living are just making these willy-nilly decisions and running into it. It's always from people who don't do this work for real that are offering the dumbest, yet I want to assume well-intended suggestions, like, go slow. You obviously haven't even looked at this state if you're saying that. So many other states. Like, what if we told Georgia to go slow with expanding its limited medical access program? You couldn't go any slower in that state. Yeah. Oh, Michelle, what state are you in? Thank you for bringing this up. Michelle says, would love to help get pediatric patients access in school. It's insane being in a legal medical state and states and kids still go to the ER after diastat stops their breathing. What state are you in, Michelle? Because I agree, you're in Massachusetts. Massachusetts, how embarrassing for you. Virginia already passed school access. We were the 4th state in the nation. Massachusetts, catch up. And that exactly what you were talking about, Michelle, is how we did it. What the compelling arguments were. Number one, it's disruptive to the learning environment for the other students and for the patient student. And this is in a typically talking about this in a PEDS application, so that's it's very often a seizure disorder patient that's in school, and if they're using a CBD product for seizure control, before we even get to rescue meds, but if you're doing it just for like a maintenance, then they have to take it at as you I'm sure know, have to take it at very specific times because there's interactions with other drugs. So they have windows of time where they have to take their CBD, and parents or guardians were having to leave their jobs, go to school, take the kids off property to give them their oil, and then, like, how disruptive to everyone. We didn't need to be doing that. Also, a very compelling argument is about diastat. And how disruptive is it for everyone in that space for a child having a seizure, and that is their rescue medication as opposed to a nasal spray? Pantsing a kid in front of their peers while they're having a seizure, far more disruptive to everybody involved than a nasal spray. So these are the things we talked about here in Virginia when we were able to do that. We got a lot of fanfare. David, you're welcome. Just really send it to me. Thank you, Llewellyn. Llewellyn says, yes, in Virginia, the school nurse can administer really any healthcare provider authorized to provide service, any person authorized to provide health services. So it could be their aide as well. Like if you have a student with an aide, they can possess and administer as well. But yeah, thank you. Thank you, Llewellyn. Well, Michelle, if you want to reach out, Michelle says, I had a bill, but Baker killed it. If you want to reach out to talk about language, feel free. Hey, Zach. Thanks for joining us. Oh my God. Yikes, Michelle, that sounds terrible. Oh, Quinn, that's unfortunate about Massachusetts cannabis control. Whew. What a terrible regulator. I mean, I don't know them personally, but that sounds terrible. You connected to me on LinkedIn. Thank you, Michelle. I'll look for you there. All right, it's after 5, so let me see if there's any more stories I want to let you know about. We talked about the High Times article. That's great. Hey, and what will come as a surprise to literally no one who's ever been here before. This week, we covered a study in which investigators reported no increases in either youth use or in the percentage of adults with so-called cannabis use disorder following legalization. You can read that in NORML News, norml.org/news. Or you can get it delivered to you tomorrow morning between 9 and 9:15 Eastern if you sign up for NORML News of the Week. Go to norml.org/subscribe. Make sure you check the weekend weed read box so you get tomorrow's edition. Someone actually, they emailed, someone asked about this today. That's enough of an answer. Someone asked about this today. Oh, it was a journalist texting me to ask me about cardiovascular risk, because there was that terribly, whatever, there's some clickbait about that a few weeks ago. But you know what? Clickbait's fun, but science is funner. This is a study that we covered this week. Lifetime cannabis use is not associated with an increased risk of hypertension. Consistent with prior research, scientists identified no association between cumulative lifetime use of cannabis and incidence of hypertension. There we go. And two more for you. And these are every single one of these stories is consistent with prior studies. You've seen these before. Thank you, Michelle. I'm glad you like that. This one is about the prevalence of car accidents. This is an analysis done that looked at what happens when dispensaries open. And this is about adult use dispensaries. And researchers in this study looked at the prevalence of motor vehicle accidents on a statewide level and then on a local level, so in proximity to the dispensaries. Shockingly, researchers concluded that there were, quote, no significant changes, end quote, in the prevalence of either statewide accidents or local accidents. One more thing. What did I do? Oh, I did. I'm sorry. I just gave you the pain one. So I'll give you that one, and then I'll talk about that one. There's the link to the motor vehicle accident study, and then the one I should have been talking about is about opioids. And in this study I think was done in Perth, Australia. In that country, cannabis is available by prescription. Whatever prescriptions look like in Australia, that's the language they use there. And there were two cohorts in the study. These cohorts are for pain patients using opioids. And one of the cohorts had cannabis extracts prescribed, and the other cohort did not. And what will come as a surprise to no one, researchers concluded, quote, "These findings indicate that the introduction of cannabinoids can produce useful reductions in opioid consumption in real-world settings." You don't say. They did use extracts in this. The extracts had THC and CBD. And the patients who consumed the extracts were more likely than the controls to experience decreases in depression, anxiety, insomnia, and disability, in addition to reducing their opioid use. And it was a significant reduction in their opioid use following their adjunctive use of medical cannabis. Michelle, good for you. Yeah, Quinn brings up a point about risks, and there's a lot of clickbait out there about schizophrenia or psychosis. And here's the thing: people who have unmet mental health needs use substances at a higher rate than people who do not. And not only do they use substances at a higher rate, they use multiple substances. They're polydrug users at a much higher rate than people who do not have unmet mental health needs. Cannabis isn't for everybody. And for people who are predisposed to schizophrenia, to psychoses, cannabis can make it worse. In theory, can not be good for them, right? I don't want to say make it worse. It cannot be the right choice for them. You see this connection a lot because people with unmet healthcare needs use substances. And just because you're in the middle of a psychotic break doesn't mean you don't use substances. Maybe you use more because you're in the middle of a psychotic break. And this is a thing that happens. This isn't like a 10-minute thing. This is a thing that happens over an experience that happens over some time. So then when you research people who've had psychotic breaks and they were using cannabis, it's real easy and lazy to go, oh, well, it's the marijuana. But correlation is not causation, friends. And there is also a lot of study out there that talks about the clinical applications of cannabinoids for patients with schizophrenia, for patients with other psychoses. So thanks for bringing that up, Quinn. Hey, Mary Jane. 0, 0, 0, David, 0. 0. David has a question about Virginia. David says, what's the chance that current stores that operate in hemp sales could have their locations, not going to use that word because it's super racist. No, I'm not calling you that. I'm not assuming that you knew that, but I learned that is super racist, so I'm not going to say it. Have their locations included when it comes to proximity to schools and churches, etc. These are separate. In order to, just because someone has a property right now that they're using for whatever, doesn't mean they can convert that property into an adult or a medical dispensary in Virginia. You're still going to, not you personally, but one would still have to comply with whatever provisions are outlined in the state code, so in the bill, or local restrictions. So that's still gonna, you're still gonna have to apply. No one's gonna be like automatically accepted just because they're already operating some business somewhere. I think people who were smart were like, oh, let me look at what the zoning restrictions are, and then they looked at properties like that. But also, I know you've seen, David, in Virginia, that yeah, I learned about that recently, David, so I'm glad you took that well. What was I saying? This is covered up. Hold on a second. Localities. We've seen Richmond do it, and there's another locality, and I can't think of which one it is. Maybe it was Henrico, but they've since taken action on, whether you want to call them vape stores or smoke shops or whatever, all these entities out there that sell vapes and unregulated cannabinoid products. And they've said, you're not putting that by schools. You're not super saturating this area with it. And so some of them that were those existing businesses, at least in Richmond, they were like, well, you can stay there, but no new ones. You can expect to see more of that in localities around the state. Hey, Brady, what's up? F5, bud. Hi, Melissa. Are you back yet? Okay, it's Mary Jane asked this question. This is a great closeout the show question. We talked about this at the beginning of the show, the middle of the show, and why not talk about it at the end? Mary Jane asked this: what do you think the chances are POTUS will actually act on cannabis rescheduling, even though we really need descheduling? So he recently tapped Virginia's former Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security to lead the DEA. This guy, Terry Cole, who was the secretary here in Virginia, comes from the DEA. And the Trump administration said, hey, you come back and lead the DEA. And so he did. So that's the guy who's in charge of the DEA now. He hates weed. He said really crazy stuff about weed. He made some super grammatically incorrect and frankly rude comments on his LinkedIn when he first took office here. Made some posts. It's on the NORML website. You can go find it. He made, because of course I put it there. He made some comment about making a surprise visit to the Virginia Cannabis Control Authority. What's the surprise? Like anybody, it's just a state agency. What are you surprising them with? It's just so ridiculous. And then also in there, like, had all sorts of really gross, racist dog whistle hashtags, and said like, don't act, I'm from law enforcement, where I stand on this issue. Like, all we're regulating in Canada, in Virginia, is medical cannabis. So where you stand on this issue, you think that sick people don't deserve access to medicine? Cool, heard. So that's the guy that's in charge of the DEA. So do you think he wants to reinitiate the rescheduling process? Absolutely not. But is Daddy Trump going to make him? That's the question. Is Daddy Trump going to need to get his minions to dance around with a new distraction? Well, let's find out. It's probably a little unhinged there. I would say sorry, but I'm not. Llewellyn says she thinks that he will. I think it depends on, which way the wind is blowing. What's the distraction du jour? Because he doesn't have an administration that wants to engage in rescheduling. So it's going to have to be driven by some external factor. That's my personal thought. I think that's why we heard about it to begin with. Thanks for asking. Yeah, Llewellyn says it's a start, at least for medical and banking, hopefully. It would be an improvement for Second Amendment rights. It would be an improvement for tax deductibility for state licensed businesses. It would be an improvement for public housing. And hopefully it would result in lower prices if businesses are able to take tax deductions. But other than that, it doesn't, other than that, there's not much to it. Oh, other than, how could I forget this? The federal government finally abandoning its flat earth position on cannabis. The federal government maintains marijuana in Schedule 1, and in doing so, maintains the position that it is a substance without any medical utility. It's highly addictive and dangerous. Nobody believes that. Nobody who can read believes that. And that is meaningful. For the federal government to give up that ghost, that would be meaningful. But it is not the same as descheduling, removing marijuana from the Federal Controlled Substances Act, which is the way to allow states to set their own policies without threat of federal interference. Okay, Dankerbud says this, and I'm gonna go at it here. Dankerbud says Bush didn't do it, Obama didn't do it, Trump didn't do it, Biden didn't do it. It's clearly got nothing to do with party, except Biden did. Now, could he have initiated this sooner? Yeah. Should he have initiated this sooner? Absolutely. But he didn't. At least he initiated it. Unlike everybody else, at least that administration initiated the process. Now, it's typical when there's a change. First of all, these administrative processes aren't quick. They take years. So we knew that going into this. This is the 5th time there's been one of these. It was initiated by President Biden specifically, not just his administration, by him. He led the charge on that and said, let's do this. And it was well underway. And then there was the change in administration. And as is sort of par for the course when there's a change in administration, administrative processes like that are underway are paused. They're not stopped or necessarily abandoned. They're just paused so that everyone can transition. This was January, and it is August, my friend. If he cared about this issue, he could have picked it back up anytime. Maybe there's political expediency in picking it up right now, and great. Who cares why? Just do something. Yep, David, that post is on his LinkedIn. And it's commemorated on the NORML website as well. And not just a link to it, a whole screen grab. So take it down if you want, buddy. Got receipts. Because he sounds crazy. Right, Llewellyn? Exactly. He does his own thing, so it's hard to know what's going to actually happen. Michelle very nicely says he's a businessman. I hope he can see its value and its worth. I don't think people are influenced by the financial dividends of cannabis. Like, people want to get into the business for that, but I don't think lawmakers, particularly prohibitionist lawmakers, I do not think they are moved by the idea of money that legal cannabis generates. If they were, they would all be falling over themselves to stand up America's legal cannabis industry, as opposed to trying to resuscitate America's, dying coal industry. Cannabis is infinitely larger than coal. Well, not infinitely, a very specific number. Is very much larger than the coal industry in the United States. You do definitely hear people talking about, conservative lawmakers talking about coal, but you don't. It's not as financially lucrative as cannabis. So that's just one example. But no, they're more so motivated by how financially lucrative it is to continue criminalizing people for using weed. Quinn snaps. I see your comment. My hands hurt. Okay, friends, this has been good. Let me tell you about a couple events that are coming up so that you can be at them. And these are all, we've got 4 events coming up in Kentucky, an event in Pennsylvania, and an event in Florida. Here we go. August 23rd is the Moorhead Patient Registration Fair. It's from 10 to 3 at the Center for Health and Educational Research. That's in Moorhead. Why are you calling me, Jack? I'm doing a show in Moorhead. Oh, I'm gonna post the link. This is for all of these Kentucky events. They're all the same link, okay? There you go. Next up is the London Patient Registration Fair at the London Community Center, August 30th, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. The Bowling Green Patient Registration Fair from 10 to 3 on September 13th, the Sloan Convention Center, and the Paducah Patient Registration Fair from 10 to 3 on September 27th at the Paducah-McCracken County Convention Center. These are all hosted by Kentucky NORML. This is a medical cannabis patient registration and resource fair. If you're in Kentucky, go. And also join Kentucky NORML because they're great. High five, Matt and Lauren. Thank you. Lehigh Valley, Jeff, you're amazing. Lehigh Valley NORML is hosting a screening of Up in Smoke on September 19th at 9 p.m. at the Gap Theater. Let me get you the link for that. You're welcome, Llewellyn. Thank you, friend. There you go. You can find Lehigh Valley NORML on Instagram as well. You can also find Kentucky NORML on Instagram. All of these events are also on NORML's Facebook page. And last but not least, coming up in December. Oh, I have another event, but I don't have it on my. I'm going to get the other one. Let me tell you about this one too. The 2025 NORML Key West Legal Seminar is December 4 through 6 at the Hyatt Centric Key West. You can register for that at norml.org/Key West. If you are an attorney who needs CLEs, we got you. Our legal seminars are fully accredited by every state that requires continuing legal education credits for practicing attorneys. And if you're not a practicing attorney or you just don't need CLEs, guess what? We still got you with a discounted registration rate. You don't have to be an attorney to come to the NORML Legal Seminar. It's a great event. It's a fantastic opportunity to connect people around the country as we work our way from marijuana prohibition to cannabis freedom. Also, you can meet me and Keith and Paul and Joe and Randy and have a great time with all of us in Key West. That's amazing. I want to tell you about a Virginia event coming up that's on my calendar, but that won't help you. So I have to look it up. Here it is. The Virginia Justice Conference. Hi, can we copy and paste? That would be super fun. There we go. Thank you. The Virginia Justice Conference in Richmond, Virginia is Thursday and Friday, September 11 and 12. Is it still going? Yes. So you can sign up for that at virginiajusticeconference.com. I will be presenting on the 11th. This is going to be a really excellent conference. I'm so excited for it. It's the inaugural conference, resource fair, awards, and sneaker ball that are all focused on bringing Virginia's justice community together to learn and teach and strategize for the following year, and of course to celebrate together. Make sure you check us out, and big props to Sheba Williams, Virginia NORML board member and executive director of No Left Turns here in Virginia, that does really incredible justice work. We're so grateful to Sheba for all of her expertise on not only expungement and record sealing, but on reentry, recidivism. She does amazing work. So check it out. If you're in Virginia, come to the Virginia Justice Conference. Did I do them all? I did them all. Go me. High five. Hey, James. Thanks for joining. I hope you were here before because now we're done. Will we do the show next week? No, I don't have a calendar in front of me because I took it off the wall. Let's look and see. No, we will not. We'll be doing this again in 2 weeks. Not next week, though. So in 2 weeks, mark your calendars. We're going to do this again. I love hanging out with you all. You have great questions. You're a lot of fun. I love getting to interact directly with you all. So wherever you're watching, hit that like, follow, or subscribe button so you never miss when NORML goes live. As always, I am J.M. Padini, the development director here at NORML, and I'll see you right back here next time. Bye-bye.